To hell with poverty, we'll get drunk on cheap wine. Yeah, that's one way of dealing with it.
It's showtime, folks.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Into the Music. Yeah, peace out. Yeah, I'm gonna try to get your name right this time because I screwed up the last one. So let's see. Philip,
You got it.
Jonathan,
Philip Johnson.
Andrew, Andy. You're Andy. Of course, you're Andy. What's up, kid?
Not much. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. So, in case nobody knows my name is Greg. And I think I'm losing my memory now and stuff like that. But I remember this song, and this is something that I've learned I discovered within the last year, Gang of Four. And the first song that I actually discovered, What We All Want, and doing deep dive in here and there, What We All Want, oh my God. And I don't know if I have that on your list or Phil's or John's, but this is also a really cool one. To Hell with Poverty. Yeah, I really love the title and I really love the sound. And there's so much more that I have to actually get into, for this band. But what I do know, I'm excited about, and I want to just give it out to folks and say, listen to this. So yeah, To Hell with Poverty by Gang of Four. Do you know the band?
I don't. I know the phrase Gang of Four. I remember learning about it in history class, but I don't know the band Gang of Four, so I'm interested to go down this road. And a name like To Hell with Poverty, like who can? Well, I'm sure that there are people that can't get behind that, but I'm not one of them. I can certainly get behind that.
Yeah.
Mantra. So yeah, let's give it a listen, huh?
All right, cool. Come on back.
All right. I'm a bass guy, so needless to say, we've got to bring that back so I can get more and more of that sweet bass nectar. To hell with poverty, we'll get drunk on cheap wine. Yeah. That's one way of dealing with it. I don't know what it is about this driving bass, but it definitely reminds me of like a bass line right out of like an Oingo Boingo song or something like that. It just, oh God. And Oingo Boingo is one of those words that if you have a Baltimore accent, it's just awful because of the long O sounds. But that is neither here nor there. Let's get back to it. I am digging this bass line so much. This one had a nice groove beat to that. Pretty much from jump. I mean, not at the very beginning, you didn't know, you knew it was going to be something because it was like you don't get feedback and this hint of distortion to come and not expect it to go somewhere at least semi-bombastic. And once that bass line and the rhythm section started kicking in, it was like,
yeah,
oh, okay, I can get behind this. Let's see where this takes us. And it was a lovely ride. I enjoyed it a lot. I liked the social commentary. And I got to admit, like, I was really struck by how much the music, not so much the vocals, but the music very much reminded me of Oingo Boingo.
Yeah.
Like it had that vibe to it, like that 80s vibe. Yeah, and the bass line was very, yeah. So yeah, I was
a heavier sound though, more of a kind of a punk type of rock sound than Oingo Boingo, I think, right?
Oh yeah, and that's
a little bit edginess, a little bit more harder edge.
Yeah, a little bit harder edge, and I think the vocalist helped with pulling it back towards the punk genre. Than like it's Danny Elfman, right? That's the singer for Oingo Boingo.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
He's got a singer's voice. Like he can actually sing really well. And I'm not taking anything away from the singer of Gang of Four, but Gang of Four's got more of like a rock and roll, like punk rock kind of sound to his voice.
Yeah.
And that was where the similarities certainly diverged. But all in all, for not having heard the band before and not knowing what to expect, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's another one of those where I'd want to hear more from the band before I'm like, yeah, I like them, or yeah, I don't.
Okay.
But I certainly liked this song.
Again, I had to look at the respective lists, and if what we all want is on anyone else's list but yours, we're gonna have to talk with them, because I don't know. That one is, I really want you to listen to that one. That's so good. But we'll stay with this. Before I actually get into this, if I say, if I give you a song name, I love a man in a uniform, or give you that line, does that ring a bell at all? I love a man in a uniform. I love a man in a uniform. So
No.
I like that song, and that's a song, that's a new wave song back in the 80s, back in my day when I was going to nightclubs and stuff, and that was like always on, and people would go out and dance to that and stuff. And then cut to a year ago when I'm like deep diving and I'm discovering that song, What We All Want by Gang of Four. Oh my God. And then finding out that they actually did that song too. So they had a little, they definitely evolved as a band. It went from like a real kind of punk sort of sound, and then punk rock, and then like a new wave, and then a danceable kind of stuff too, more like a sort of a mainstream. That became like something that a lot of stations played in the late 1980s. I think that was 87, 88 or something like that.
Was that sort of a natural, could that have not, I mean, is that, I feel like because, and you know more because you lived it, and I barely, I mean, it certainly wasn't, I just know what others who are older than me have told me. But is that like would that be a normal succession in popular genres where like the late 70s, early 80s definitely had its punk movement, and then new wave became a thing more towards like the mid to late 80s? And if you wanted to keep relevant and afloat, you had to transition your sound from one to the other?
Yeah, I mean, Sushi and the Banshee, Sushi, people laugh at me about it. Susie and the Banshees, and right down the line, even The Cure. Absolutely. They definitely evolved. Went from a real kind of, I mean, Television did the same thing. There's so many other bands out there too, where late 70s, early 80s are punk. Yeah.
Could you say the same of the Talking Heads? Like earlier Talking Heads was a little bit more punk, and then they moved to definitely into the new wave sound, or were they always?
They became more pop. They sold out concerts and they were huge. I just think that it's just sort of natural evolution for a lot of bands, that they start off with, with this kind of energetic, raw energy, kind of like, whether that's, a harder rock sound or a punk sound, and this and that. And then as they evolve, they start smoothing the edges a bit,
and they just mature as human beings, right? They get older, and
that's because they're growing up. Well, think about it. A lot of these bands are starting out at 18, 19, 20 years of age, right? And so they have like, the energy, right? So they're writing a lot of this stuff based on this energetic and their view of the world and like that. And everything's kind of like a lot of stuff's coming at you. And then as they're growing older, girlfriends, wives, maybe a family, and all of a sudden, all that starts to kind of like have an effect on their music too. So they evolve, so whether it's a kind of softening or, smoothing over the edges, if that's kind of appropriate way of kind of describing it. But I think that as, people mature, their art changes, and then it's like, you either stay on board or, you get off, and with this band, they definitely evolved. And it's really sad because Andy Gill, who, I mean, that beginning part with that distortion, I mean, that was like crazy. It was almost as though like they put the guitar against the speaker and then the mics were still going. But then you knew that it was intentional, because then there's a bending of the strings on that. There's a bending. And it's like so good. And then it gets into that doom, 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 doom. But
you can definitely, I can visualize the guitarist like turning toward and leaning into the amplifier.
Yeah.
In the very beginning of that song.
Yeah.
But it painted a picture with just audio, so that was really, really cool. And then man, when the bass comes in, dude, like it's hook, line, and sinker. They got me. So
and then Andy
on that groove.
And then Andy Gill, then the guitarist, was like, okay, this is cool. That's good groove, and then he's doing his guitar riff that's supporting that bass. And then that was like, So Andy actually passed away in early 2020. There's some thought that he actually passed away to COVID. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed.
But like at the time, they didn't know. It's just all that,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
that's what it
yeah.
was.
And they would. I mean, I think he had just toured. He had just finished a tour, and then he was gone. So, yeah. So I gave Chris a song called Anthrax. That's a really cool song. So he reacted to that about a year ago. And so you got to check that out on the channel. That might have been before you started tuning in. And yeah, there's just so much more Gang of Four. I was going to give him. Now I can give you or Phil or John. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a well. I mean, I was just thinking about the likelihood of me hearing it, but I definitely like when I found your channel, I definitely back cataloged the shit out of your guys' stuff, like combing through it.
So maybe you've seen it. Yeah.
Maybe I have
heard it.
Maybe it was so alien to me that it didn't catch my eye, and which is true. I judged a book by its cover and said, never heard that name before.
Although Anthrax, you would think that maybe you would be like, that would resonate.
Yeah. Well, when I hear Anthrax, I think of the thrash metal band Anthrax.
Yeah.
my mind goes.
What about the title of the song? What were your expectations with that? Were you catching some of the lines too? And did you get a feel for what the song was saying?
Yeah. And like the parts where he's talking about like, tell with poverty, let's get drunk on cheap wine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those parts stuck out to me. Got a cheap laugh. But really, I was so wrapped up in the music and in that bass line that I didn't focus. I didn't hang on every word like I sometimes do in reactions. And maybe that's a disservice to the song. And I should.
No, it's a first listen. It's a first. Yeah. No, yeah. So I mean, I've had the luxury to listen to it more, and I had my ideas, and then I've kind of read some things too. And from what I'm gathering, and I agree with this, it's kind of like a catch-22, right? Where they're saying to hell with poverty, right? Because, they're making a comment about, we're poor, we struggle, right? And then yet, they're going to, we'll get drunk on cheap wine. And
probably not the best thing to do with your money, right?
So it's a catch-22. It's like, what are you doing to possibly try to get out of that situation? You doing anything? I mean, it could it could be perhaps, lack of education. It could be a combination of that and maybe bad choices in life. But, whatever situation you're in, can you try to maybe not kind of get drunk on cheap wine and maybe see if you can get out of that? So, and that's easier said than done. And that's kind of a very simplistic way of looking at poverty. Usually it's much more deep rooted than that. But
it's also kind of a slap in the face to tell someone who's poor that cheap wine is a luxury, because it's like, that's not under no one's circumstances should cheap wine be considered a luxury. But if someone is so impoverished that the one, vice or thrill they allow themselves is some shitty wine, and they're being judged for it, and again, that's catch-22, because I do agree. Hey, man, maybe salt some of that cheap wine money away and get yourself out of it. But how much cheap wine money saved is really going to get someone out of poverty? Also, who are we to say, as we drink our mid-level wine or high for you,
right?
So it's a really tough situation. But I remember hearing that line and going, I may have said this in the review or thought it, but that's one way of dealing with your hatred for poverty.
I don't know. And that's interesting. That sort of look at it, because I was also thinking too, that it might be more of kind of your state of mind. It's not so much that you're spending the money on cheap wine, but it's that if you're going to be in a consistently sort of drunk state, go to work and then you cap off each day by getting drunk. And there, I mean, that's out there, right? And it's like, maybe you should try to alter that and change that, break that, so you're in a clear state of mind. So maybe, maybe there could be a better plan. There could be, so I think it's more that, not so much but that's just my opinion.
No, again, this whole song is there's an argument on each side. But if someone is capping off their underpaid workday, living in the doldrums of poverty, consuming libations to deal with it, is and saying to them, hey, it's not so much the spending the money on the cheap wine, it's just living in this constant repetitive state of not growing out of this situation.
I think that's, yeah.
Do they have the resources? Do they have the really good insurance to get them into a clinic, or do they have the money to afford themselves to go
Right.
or to cleanse themselves, or any, like, it's so multifaceted and layered and nuanced that you can't just be like, you can't just speak in a maxim and wash away and fix everything. That's not how the world works, you know? So yeah, like a saying like, to hell with poverty, that's a maxim in and of itself, right? There's no minutia or nuance into how we address it. It's just just words in the wind. But it's fun and clever the way that they've packaged this converse, something that can breed this kind of conversation or discourse about something. It has to be cleverly packaged to do that. And this is, interesting. It's a droll way to drum up conversation about a serious topic.
And
so clever.
It's as relevant as today. I mean, they could be singing about folks like me and you living in the United States in 2022. I mean, inflation is like out of control. And maybe I've been thinking about cheap wine lately because, I mean, the prices, it's incredible. I mean, every time we go to the grocery store and we look at the receipt, we're like, holy shit, maybe I shouldn't have those Entenmann's donuts anymore. Maybe I should be pulling back on any kind of luxury, it's just crazy. It really is how expensive everything is today. And so I think that's actually, that's grouping a lot more people, a lot more different sort of folks from different, all different levels, into more of a sort of same sort of boat, just struggling, to watch money and to.
Not everybody in the same boat, because if you look at the returns on all these big corporations and the amount of money that they've made in the last year, they're seeing record numbers. And yet we're still getting, if you look at the oil companies are making more than they have in a long time, and they're shattering annual records. And yet we're still in the wake of that news looking at $4 a gallon for gasoline. It's like, now how do you sleep at night if you've just shattered records on an annual revenue? And then you look at what the everyman is having to deal with at the grocery store.
Oil companies within the United States, or we're talking about global?
I think that those two go hand in hand.
Because we're not producing anything really here.
No, we're not producing. I think those who distribute are saying so you see Exxon and companies like that making killer revenues. And it was happening. Price gouging is ridiculous. I mean, we were seeing it, like the amount of money that Bezos made during the pandemic while everyone else is struggling and losing work. Like our unemployment rate was at an ungodly number during the beginning, all of 2020, basically.
Yeah.
And 2020 saw him make so much money because everybody was relying on his service and whatever prices he was asking for during that. The same thing for on a lower level, like places like Uber Eats and Grubhub, knocking people over the head because they're locked indoors and need to rely on them to get food or goods.
Yeah.
So there could be plenty of songs that question the decision of the guy purchasing the cheap wine to get through a shitty situation. But I could write a far more pointed song at those who enable or breed the environment where that can occur. And I think, and not to say that there aren't a shit ton of those songs out there, because believe me, there are. I listen to them. I'm a fan of Rage Against the Machine. I've listened to just about everything they put out, and they go after those kind of entities pretty pointedly. But this is any kind of music that can evoke a conversation where people have a mature discussion about the state of things, and not just a love song, or not that there's anything wrong with them, but something that's got more depth to it. They're always fun listen and great conversations that they then sort of birth.
That's great. It really is. I'm really curious to see like what people out there who are watching this right now, they're ready just to like, their fingertips are burning. They have to like type some stuff out and let us know what they think
Right.
about this song to see what they think about our opinions, our input on this. What do they think? And what about that music? Great music too. Yeah, and Gang of Four. I mean, I mentioned again what we all want. What's that other stuff out there from that band that you think we should be listening to? And in the meantime, Andy, you have a really good rest of the day. And to everyone out there, well, we'll just see you on the next episode of Into the Music.